business schools, and I think a lot of people question how much emphasis to place on rankings. They can be misleading when you compare two of them. Excuse me, they can be very different. So the question next is, how important are rankings when considering a business school? Tess, maybe you can start off, please.
When you choose a business school, I would have to say that we shouldn't look at ranking only. It could be a start, but I don't think we should make a selection based on the ranking only, because it all depends on how they make the ranking as well. We see that the ranking from the economies will be very different from the Financial Times and from other magazines. So you have to be careful about that. I think the most important thing for you is first select the business school which will actually fit your needs, because many institutions do have their own specificities, so you have to look into that. But I think ranking can just give you an idea, and I think knowing about the trend of the business school could be good as well. If it's going up in the ranking, so maybe that's a good sign, But as I said, I don't think you should really base on your choice on the ranking.
I think rankings are important. Because as my colleague has mentioned, rankings provide you a starting point. But then you have to really look at the fact, what is that business school offering to you? And every MBA is slightly unique. So our MBA, for example, focuses on connectivity and systems thinking, using systems thinking for connectivity in a complex world. Some MBAs focus on entrepreneurship. Some MBAs focus on innovation. So you have to really ask yourself the question, what is it that you want to do from an MBA? Then look at rankings, and rankings will change depending on what you're looking for. So some MBA programs may be very good generalist MBA programs, but if you're interested in innovation or technological management or systems thinking, then the rankings will dramatically change. So look at what you want out of an MBA and then go for it. So to put it in a more simple nutshell, in India, if you want the best place, I'm told still, and please correct me if I'm wrong, if you want to do an MBA in finance, the best place to go is Calcutta, not Ahmedabad. But if you want to go in management consulting, then Ahmedabad is the place to target at. If you want to go into IT consulting, ISP is not a bad bet, but they were huge batch size. The same thing applies in the US, same thing applies in the UK and in Europe and in Australia. So look at look at the rankings and see what exactly you want, and then maybe refine your search. But rankings are important. Rankings can also be very divisive. So for example, we don't enter in a few rankings, but we enter in other types of rankings. So not business school will enter in all the different search parameters that you may use for rankings. So keep that in mind.
It's a good way to start, but it would be a very horrible way to finish your decision, right? Sometimes ranking could be misleading, especially in case of India, right? You can buy rankings, and there are a lot of areas where schools are not ranked. So if you have to really go and figure it out, which is the best school for entrepreneurship, there is no ranking available. You have to figure it out. This is the best business school for business consulting, there is no ranking available. Which is the best school for telecom management, there is no ranking available. Which is the best school for operation, there is no ranking available. So you have to really consider, as I mentioned in my earlier monologue, that you have to really consider what exactly you're looking for. Right? It's a good place to start. At least it will give you a picture that which are the good business schools. And then put all the parameters and create a complex equation. BMW is the best, but can you afford it? No. And certainly, can you run BMW in Mumbai's road? No way. So there are a lot of parameters which you need to really put under consideration before taking a final call.
Yes, I agree with what the previous speaker said. Ranking is a starting point, and also you need to understand ranking comes with the different weights given by for different components, and the weights are selected depending on the institution that the rankings are given. That's why if you look at different business schools, get the different ranking from different sources. So the ranking is important, but you need to pay more attention to what you really need from a business school.
matching, not ranking. And I learned from the last panel that I did, the QS maybe is working towards something like this. You can read about the different schools, but that doesn't mean, as we talked originally, do you belong there? So what if you could put in your qualifications, you could put in your GMAT, you could put in what it is you want to study, you could put in other things that were important to you, and school match it, and to see how it fits with different schools, and some nice machine that will spit out a list of schools for you to consider. I think I like that a lot better than rankings. And I got to tell you, this is coming because our evening program was suddenly, not so suddenly, but ranked this year. And all of a sudden my world has become, how do we keep that ranking? How are we going to go up in the ranking? What happens if we go down in the ranking? And it's making me crazy. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. Yeah, I think Nancy touched on it. I'll mention what she was talking about in just a moment, but I think it's been summed up well. You know, various rankings have different weightings applied to them. QS don't have a strict MBA ranking. We actually have, some of you may have come across the QS World University rankings. They remain controversial. That's the nature of all rankings. But when you compare our rankings to another institutions, they can be very different. But that's the nature of them. And as Bhupesh said, it's a good starting place, you know, good indicator of maybe some weightings, but by no means should you end your search there. As for the MBA side of things, we don't have a strict business school ranking, but we have something called QS Scorecard, which is a personalized B-School ranking based on criteria that you enter. It could be your GMAT score, it could be the budget that you have, it could be the country that you wish to study in or a specialization, and then it's on the top MBA site, and it will give a top 10 or top 20 based on what criteria you've entered. Again, that shouldn't be the end of your search. It's just an indicator, it's just a tool to help you along your way. There's a lot more. It's just one part of the journey to finding the ideal MBA for you. Just a final question in the first section. What can one expect to share and learn from your fellow students? I think, Nelson, you can answer this one first.
Yeah, you can learn a lot from fellow students. That's why most of the business school, as you said, that you have a quota for different countries. We don't want to have a ghetto from one country where that particular group dominates most of the students. So in particular, that in our case, it is the case where we have quota from different countries, and we go and recruit students from different cultural background and different sort of countries, even in Latin America and Europe, we visit up there and recruit the students to give the diversity and then the clash with ideas during the class, and that is very important. And last time when I was teaching international business students, when they had a global economic crisis, some French students, they were talking about introducing fixed exchange rate systems, and so other students, they didn't like it, but it really lead to really good class discussion and the pros and cons of the fixed against the floating exchange rate system sort of discussion. So that's why it's very important you to look at the composition of the different students, different groups, and it's simply because you can learn from them. Because they are coming from different industry experience, different background, and maybe they are coming from engineering background, or some people coming from IT background. That's why it is very important. Background and the composition, all factors, they are very important.
I think it's important to look at, you know, when I speak to my students on this point, I always mention two taglines to them. The first is not to reinvent the wheel. Okay? Now, most of you will have functional expertise in a particular domain. It could be IT consulting, it could be financial management, it could be maybe in investment banking. When you are looking at a problem on an MBA, you have to break it down into financial, human resource components, into operation components, etc., etc. across the entire business management spectrum. Therefore, you should be able to connect with your classmates who have proven competencies in those specific areas. So when we select a student, we select